Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Ooh, I want to cover the interesting person who's known as Uri Geller. Of course, like everybody who's alternative different, they are persecuted, particularly if you go out of mainstream science. Um, so many people do. Other ones are made into heroes who are the most low level, scumbucket, ass crack thinkers that you ever want to think of. Penn and Teller, Unamazing Randy, Michael Shermer. All these people are basically glorified for some particular reason. Well, they are glorified because I allege they're all on the payroll of the people in control. They want the status quo. They don't want free energy and healing. That takes trillions out of their pockets. So what we get is a bunch of the same old company line, and all of those who go along with it, who are paid directly or indirectly by the controllers, you could call them, whatever that is, the mishmash of control factors in this world, out there, including all of Dumbademia and people like Sean Carroll, etc., are just clones of these people living in basically a 500-year-old paradigm. And it's okay with them because the date says 20 whatever. Oh, yeah, it's modern because of the date. Oh, the problem is your beliefs are 500 years old and don't really, they're a sieve now. They're kind of like a pasta filter. What is it called? Colander? Everything just kind of falls through it, but a little bit stays behind. That's big enough and stupid enough for Dumbademia. So we need to understand that first of all. So if you expect anybody in this field, and I don't know anyone who's a psychic or etc. who does anything differently that has ever been given any credit. People who are smart take their abilities and use it in the primitive, stupid society and get rich with it and just, yeah, that's right. I went to Tony Robbins to figure it out. Yeah, that's right. Here's me book. That's what you really have to do. And of course, it's always behind the scenes of what's going on. And of course, so many of these controller types are, of course, using magical type empowerments or technologies, etc. So it's a fraud anyway. They keep it for themselves and keep you away from it, as is done in this world traditionally, because all the popular occultists, radionic machine builders, orgone people, all are connected to the, quote, Black Lodge, organized crime, etc. They're supported to make sure that you have junk technology and other people are suppressed. That's the way the world goes. So this is very important because that's exactly what happens with Uri Geller. Now, let's get to his history, which is kind of interesting. First of all, and it is important because it's a lifestyle, it's a thinking, and is that Uri Geller is an Israeli, of course he now has British, I guess he was Israeli British at the time, because at the time he was born in Tel Aviv, the British ran that area. So I guess he got British citizenship automatically, I don't know. But these things are important because it's how your life changes. And of course, he was born in 1946. He's 74 now. And he's a very, very interesting person. We think as manifesting scientists and occult scientists that if you have some abilities, that you are somehow special. You don't need to eat. Sex is unimportant. Money is impossible. You're not interested in it. Because you live on psychic power. That's all you need. Psychic power. It's kind of like you live just on love. Well, the only people that live on a quasi-making love are hookers that I know of. So the whole idea is it's all nonsense. So let's move into these areas as well. So he was born there. He's the son of a retired Army sergeant, and his mother was Margaret Freud. Isn't that interesting? And Geller does claim, and probably true, is that his mother was a distant relative to Sigmund Freud. Isn't that interesting? Who was very much into parapsychology, and actually Freud stated that if he was to do it over again, he would go back into psychic research. Isn't that interesting? Again, does anybody know that? Mr. Scientist Man, yeah, you love your mother, you want to stick your little D and everything. Well, the point is, unfortunately, he was right for most of that. But it's interesting that his mother is a relative of Freud, and his father was a military man. But at the age of 11, his family moved to Cyprus, and he spent a lot of the rest of his kind of early and informative youth there. At the age of 18, he joined the Israeli Army's paratrooper brigade, with which he served in the 1967 war and was wounded. So, I think this is important. I'm sick and tired of a whole bunch of armchair chicken hawk type people and all this shit on intellectuals and the unamazing Randy, who's any war he's ever had is with his trousers trying to get his little Mickey out. So the whole idea is that, I think that's important. Are these philosophizers who haven't seen the raw steel come at their face or their buddies blown to bits and want to say how the world should be. Penn and Teller. So I think this is a real thing, and the horrors of war. And we have to give him credit. I don't know if he was, I don't think he was forced to. He was not living in Israel, but he joined to fight for his people and his country, which continues to this day. So it's important that we understand that. So I think that's important. This is part of his form. And he wasn't sitting at a desk somewhere doing remote viewing with the rest of the morons in the American Army. Yeah, we're all taught by gay guys. We're retards. We're idiots. We thrown in this because nobody wants us, and we're geniuses. We know everything except nothing works. So I think it's important that we understand this guy was in the front lines. He was a paratrooper who got into major action. I've read about his in his book of that. So he got shot. He was involved in combat. Gives you a different. Now, most everybody here has not been involved or put upon enough to know the stresses of that. Well, I personally have been in the military. I've been in military-type situations for all of my life, including pursued by gangs murdering me, and continue to this today to be harassed by armed criminals. So the whole idea is that I get it. He gets it. An amazing Randy, Michael Shermer. I wrestled with the Mormon Church once. I went to Malibu College. One day I didn't have wax for my surfboard. Ooh, I see the light. So the whole idea is that these kind of people are the dregs of our society that are held up on platforms by other dregs of societies, and they proselytize on their butt crack wisdom for all of us to marvel at. So let's get back to my boy Yuri. Okay, now. So he's had this interesting thing. He did start to do, and of course you can't believe anything you see on Seweropedia, which is infested by scumbuckets, butt crack thinkers. So by the 1970s, which was pretty soon after the 67 war, where he looked death in the face, he started to do, magic mentalism shows. Let's say that. I'm sure some of it was mentalism, but he used to demonstrate all the things that he further demonstrated at the same time, by the way, to Andrei Prasharik, the educated medical doctor, MD baby, not some guy. Oh, I studied worms. I have a PhD. I have an PhD. I'm a doctor. Yeah, well, you're a doctor in a PhD land, which is quite different than being a medical doctor, which deals with all sorts of realities and confronts you with life and death. So that's Andrei Prasharik, not Yuri Geller, who apparently didn't go to any formal training. So he was doing this to make money. He had no other way. He wasn't educated. You can't really take him. I'm a paratrooper. Can I get a job here? No, like all military jobs. I drive a tank. Can I get a job here? Yeah, right. No educational background, and so he didn't want to stay in the military, and apparently didn't want to stay in Israel to any great extent. So he started doing it, and why not? He had this ability and was able to be a performer. That's where money is. The highest paid people on this planet, when you get down to it, are theatrical performers, from magicians to other people, and magicians make a fortune. So there is a kind of a clouded way of how he came to America, but Andrei Puharich heard of this person. Russell Charg claims that his family was involved with bringing Geller over here as well. But somehow someone connected. I'm not going to go into all this. He's got a book out there, and I think you could read it on free at urigeller.com. He has other free stuff there and information if you're interested in it. But you can read his life story there online for free. So, of course, he got most famous for the dramatic, simplistic yet dramatic spoon bending, and other things. But, it's hard to put a show together. But he's a very charismatic person. One thing about Uri I've heard from everybody who's met him is that he's extremely charismatic, like most of these people. People like him. And this is something that happens with any famous people generally. They tend to like the people. The fact that what he did on stage can be copied by liars and deceivers and con men, and that's really what they are. They're con men that do it in front of you and then take your money, not stealing it from your wallet and putting your wallet back in your pocket that you don't know about, but you willingly open your wallet to con men for people. Oh, I tricked you. Isn't that funny? You're an idiot. I just made $100 million this year, Penn and Teller. So the whole idea is this is what's going on. And his gimmick was the fact that, and I don't know how he expressed it, but nobody wants to go and see a fake psychic. So he stated that he was doing this from real mind power. And this seems to have been verified by people around him, his family, etc. Now, how much of this was done every night, performance after performance of doing this, and how much was mentalism, which is nothing more than theatrical magic that copies psychic powers, ESP, etc. It's not the other way around. Psychics aren't copying mentalists, just like they stole the term magician from regular magicians. Now, magicians is an occult science term of a person of power who can do things. So these frauds stole that. So let's remember that. All of that is what happens. So they're copying real magicians. So the whole idea is that he went in and was doing these things and other things, and certainly did have powers. Now, like everyone who's smart, like the famous David Hoy, who people have forgotten, but was big at his time in the 70s as well, who used to do psychic readings and magic tricks and bend spoons and everything. He combined everything together to make an interesting show. Why? Well, he was an evil guy. He wanted to trick people. Yeah, that's what David Hoy. I knew David Hoy. He was a bad man. He wanted to put food in his belly. He wanted a house. He wanted to take care of his children. What gall! Evil people like him will find out what happens when you deal with Satan. Yeah. So the bottom line is because people want to make a living and make good money while big-butted freak women make hundreds of millions of dollars on TV because they made porno films with their athlete lovers. God forbid somebody who has some abilities should be able to not live in a box on the street. Because we all know that the men of God all live poor. Very poor like Jesus did. Jesus only had one Rolls Royce. He only lived in a 50-room mansion. Plain and simple. Now this guy wants to... I'm a minister. I deserve the same thing. Benny Hinn, who drives a $150,000 Mercedes and wears $10,000 suits while he's fakely curing nobody. Or all these other ministers who certainly live in luxury mansions and certainly ain't driving a bicycle. And by the way, for the record, if you believe in Jesus came from a fairly wealthy family. People think, oh, well, he was born in a barn. That's because the Hilton was full. He didn't get born in a barn because he didn't have money. The kings came and gave him gold and silver and all sorts of stuff. He was a wealthy dude. And so was his family, who had a great trade. Carpenters made lots of money. That means he was a construction worker who make good money to this day. So let's get all that kind of stuff out of the way as well, that you have to somehow be poor. Yeah, you should be poor, they should be rich. So this is all that same nonsense that goes on that is only kept to other people. So basically you can be poor, weak, and stupid, and they can stomp on you because they don't want you around, like Houdini did to make sure he stopped real psychics from prospering, because his whole profession was going to be crushed. Theatrical magic was losing crowds by the tens of millions to these spiritualists who actually did something of interest other than, you tricked by what I did, you idiot. They were actually talking to the dead, talking to your relatives. And a lot of them were real. And it was demonstrated to him as Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's wife, who was a medium at that time, spoke to his mother and got information there. But that wasn't good enough for the little devil Houdini. He made sure that he, of course, turned it. On the bottom line, of course, like everybody on this planet, came down to the money. So spiritualists don't deserve money with semi-fake shows or even fake shows that are fun. I mean, after all, do you believe in superheroes, that you go out and spend whatever it is now to see a movie? So, why not? It's entertainment. What's wrong with that? If you feel better afterwards that you communicated with a deceased relative, well, that's a pretty good bang for your entertainment buck. Oh, but they don't deserve it. Now, only the fakey frauds can do that. So let's get all that into it so we all understand what's going on here with these things. So Uri Geller did theatrical, combined it with other things, and more power to him, like David Hoy, and I'm assuming so many other people out there. There's probably a lot of real psychics who are pretending to be magicians to make money, because you can't make money as a psychic. So I'm sure there's the other way around going on. David Henning was big into this, who suddenly died, interestingly. Amazing how these people that always get close to solving the puzzle tend to pass away. He was big into this and actually was a great popular magician in the middle to late 70s that then, as I said, mysteriously died. So who knows? There was to do all the things involved with this. So, but Geller has been proven to do things that is theatrically impossible to stage do, period. And we'll get into that in a minute. So the whole idea is that if we go through his so forth, that he actually, and he's admitted to putting psychic tricks in his act in his book. That's right. Well, is there anything wrong with that? As I just covered. So it's just ridiculous. So he went around and he was very, very popular. Andrew Prasharik, of course, supposedly, and some other ones brought him to the United States. But it was more than bringing him to the United States. Andrew Prasharik went to Israel, where he was performing, and I'm not going to get into the extraterrestrial stuff, but there was a big part of that. And that's in the book Uri Geller, I think written by Prasharik, I'm not sure, which was a big bestseller at that time in the late 70s. And you can read that. I mean, I could talk about these things for hours, but I don't think anybody really cares. And people tend not to listen to things past a few minutes, but not that I personally care that much, but so I will give details to a certain extent. But I could spend hours and hours, and that's just overkill. But Andrew Prasharik, the medical papered physician who went to medical school, worked his way through medical school, became a talented person. And that's a whole nother story of how great Andrew Pisharek was. An inventor. He was the inventor of the stolen neurophone that Patrick Flanagan claimed he made. Well, there's a whole bunch of patents, and he made a fortune on different types of devices that are based in physical reality, Andrew Pisharek, on top of being a medical doctor. So, I mean, this is important. We give credit to people that have papers with their names on it and do things. Well, is there any papers and names on it for Unamazing Randy? No, not even a high school diploma. Not even a clown college like Penn and Teller. I'm assuming he has a certificate that's shaped like big giant shoes, from what I understand. So the whole idea is that this is the reality of it. So these are credible people, and this is another thing they try. They've tried to say that he was a terrible researcher, yet he produced amazing physical tools for hearing, and has many patents. Made a lot of money there. It's the reason why he was able to do some of this stuff. So he went there for many years. I'm not sure of all the data. It doesn't matter. Tested him hour after hour after hour, day after day after day, for free, by the way, and got nothing but positive results from him. Just as he did with several other top people who they've tried to say are liars and cheats. He was an excellent researcher with a scientific background. Penn? What's your science background?
I do tricks with a high school Latin teacher who doesn't talk.
Whoa. No, I'm not asking what your idiot's profession is. What's your scientific background? Did you go to school? Did you have anything? Did you even read a book? Probably. Okay, nothing. Clown college. Family was jailers. Okay. Did your daddy talk to you about science around the dinner table? No? Oh, no. He talked about jail land perversions that he was part of and the entire corrupt system there. Is that what he talked about? Oh, okay. And you're a genius, Penn, right? 300 plus pounds, eating boxes after boxes of Krispy Kremes. You put peanut butter on cheese and couldn't understand why you were fat. This was your intellectual judgment while you were close to death. But I guess when you look at your bank statement, 150 million. He said, gee, maybe I should hang around a little bit more. But your judgment was to put peanut butter on cheese and think this was good for you. More science at work, huh, Penn? Yeah, that's great. You made some deductive reasoning there. I love that, Penn. Or was that part of the Latin training you got from Tella? But let's remember, it's high school Latin training. So let's understand where these people are coming from. It's very interesting to know that because this is what it's all about out there, if we're going to give credibility to people. So Andrew Pisharek was a genius. He spent 4 years training with the Hunas in Hawaii personally in the 1960s before there was all this New Agey garbage. He went down and studied with the ayahuasca people and took hallucinogens for 4 years in the jungle with them, just as he spent the time in Hawaii with them. This is a super advanced person who is pooed upon by science and the regular public, or I should say the scientific public. So, I mean, this is very important. So the whole idea is this is the guy who tested him and came out that he was 100% real and powerful, etc. This was followed up by many things in the 70s, and we should begrudge him that he was big on television. I remember watching Geller on television and putting watches on my TV that didn't work, and they started working again. I remember all this. And coming from having an ignoramus scumbucket engineer father who couldn't fix his car, these things were not looked at by anything of importance. So, when we get into all these things, we have to fully understand what is going on there. So he was tested by a noted scientist, not some little guy with a degree from who knows where, from a top school, yada, yada, yada. Does everybody get that? Okay. Proven that all his abilities were real, and did this for hours after hour. He tested in a very typically poor scientific method him for hours and hours every day, all the time, and didn't pay him a penny. He had plenty of money from all of his different inventions, other things that he made. So he had money coming in and donations and other things that he was able to actually fund his things quite well. But from what I can tell, and I always want to look at this. Well, you go to SRI and they say, "Gee, come, we want to test you." And you're supposed to do it for the good of the world, like Russell Targ did, who made hundreds of thousands of dollars as in corporate world. And don't think the millions of dollars that were paid to SRI for research was something that went into coffee and tables and equipment. Most of the stuff that you use in all this kind of, quote, psychical research doesn't cost anything. They're just doing things. There's virtually no expenses involved with it. So, that's very important to understand as well. These things are not something that is expensive to do. And if you think they're doing this for free, well, that's why you need money. That's why research is expensive. Research is expensive. And of course, there is a certain amount of this stuff that is expensive in terms of the fact that equipment, scientific, but you're talking about the 70s. And of course, while computers were expensive then, it wasn't necessarily the thing that was so difficult to obtain. Once you got those, and there's certain other equipment, but this is minimal. What is expensive is hiring people. Now, from what I understand, SRI did put people up. He mentions putting them up and so forth, and giving them, I guess, room and board. But I don't think anybody was paid for anything. And they certainly should be. You're a professional. You want to test me. Okay. But if I do it for free, that makes what I am offering worthless. And why would you do it? For the good of whom? To help whom? Where's the money? Show me the money. That's what this world runs on. That's what science runs on. Government agents are paid extremely well. So is the military. Officers make a fortune. Nobody's doing anything for free. The Red Cross, their top people are paid $500,000 a year plus. So let's remember all that. So I don't remember, there's no mention of his books, and I went over the sections of him getting a penny. A matter of fact, Geller was complaining, hey, look, I have to make money here. I'm a poor kid. I don't have anything. That's why I'm doing shows. Andrew Prasharik's answer to that is that, well, Geller was a kind of a little arrogant punk. Like, again, he's living in the lap of luxury with all his donations and money he makes from science. And Geller gets nothing. And this is a problem with Andrew Prasharik. So one of the problems I have with all these researchers, I think it's perfectly okay for them to get lots of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Don't think that these theoretical physicists are paid $20,000 a year. These people have spent 8-10 years in college, and they expect to be well paid for that. You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and God knows what other perks. Being a scientist and a research scientist is a pretty cushy job. Being a college professor is a cushy job. You don't really do anything. You have teacher aides. They grade the papers. They do everything. You show up and babble for an hour. Oh, I fit by. There's very little that you actually do, and that's another fraud. Most teaching is like this. Teachers aren't spending extra time. They're not helping students. This never happened with my learning disabilities or anybody else that I've talked to at learning disabilities, particularly of my age. I never heard of anybody getting helped anywhere. A students are always helped. because they created themselves. And then the teachers take credit for it. Oh, I made him a genius. You made him a genius? No, he's got the memory and can pick up the crap that you tell them. So here we go again, and one of the bitches I have at all of these sites. If you are going to be trained, and if we're going to get anywhere with this, people have to be paid to be tested. What's the problem? That's part of your cost of business. It's like bitching that, gee, I have to make a box to put the item in to put it on the shelf. That sucks. What are you talking about? That's part of the process of selling something. You just can't throw the item up there. But when it comes to the person being tested, they were supposed to be Jesus-like. I do this for the love. Oh, it's just all about love to prove. Oh, do. This is complete nonsense. And of course, it downgrades when you give people things free. Should you, and when it comes to this kind of area where there's plenty and plenty of money, and they're paid that. And you notice that parapsychologists never talk about the money they get for research and other things, and where it goes, and how much. The bottom line, if you're going to spend your entire day, your 40 plus hours, you're going to do some research, well, you have to be paid for that. Or you're going to do something else. You also it's not just pay. You need to pay your bills. You need to survive. That's where research money goes, not into fancy equipment or buildings or anything else. Of course, that's part of it if you're a big operation, but I'm assuming that's a minor part of it unless you're going to build a building from the ground up. So these are all the things that people generally do. There's rent for a building, you got to get computers, you got to buy chairs and other things. Well, I mean, this may or may not be part of a budget for something, but I'm sure that's part of it. If you're at SRI, they provide all that. So I'm assuming what they're looking for is a amount of money to pay for personnel mostly. And of course, there's got to be figures to pay for overhead and other things. It would be fascinating to learn that. But, why don't they talk about that? Another suspicious area as far as I'm concerned. But these are important things. The reason I bring these things up is this is not just additional babble off the subject. You need to understand the bigger picture. So the point is, he never got a penny. He spent, I don't know how many months and months. They did all sorts of other research into extraterrestrials, which they made contact with, all sorts of things that happened with Geller and Andrew Pisharek, which is getting into gray fuzzy areas, which doesn't really have too much to do with Uri Geller. Uri Geller does claim that he was contacted by an alien who shot him with a bolt of energy, and then after that he was psychic. Now, the problem with that is that's the jive that everybody said in the middle to late 70s to explain their abilities. Most people who, including the military remote viewers, all claim they've had some sort of extraterrestrial contact, whether it's seeing UFOs or even more than that. So, it's quite common. What do we make of this? So we need to understand all that. So he then came over here. He did all these feats on television. All these things were done. And, I have studied, to go into this as a short thing, I would be doing other things on. I studied spoon bending and tried to hunt out every possible magician's prop to bend spoons. And none of them work in the fashion that you see from Geller, who's taking real. They're all little gimmicks that really don't work very well if you're up close with it. So, they show you a bunch of nonsense on these stage magicians, but that's not what the props are out there. Everything from a little clear plastic thing you slip over two parts of a broken spoon, and then you produce this with sleight of hands, and then it bends that way, and then you hide the little piece of plastic. There's other ones that are pre-bent, but all the types of things that you see psychics do are not done. And this bending of spoons is not unusual, not difficult. Lots of people have done it. So, and have done it hundreds of thousands of times, from military generals to celebrities of all types. His name is the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, wrote a book on his basic life, who was a Harvard-trained MD, by the way. He also wrote Emergency or not Emergency, ER, the television show ER that's so popular. He wrote that show as well. He wrote Jurassic Park. He wrote a whole bunch of really great books. damn, his name escapes me. But he went up to the Mental Physics Institute in Yucca Valley, California, with a whole bunch of other groups, and was able to bend spoons there easily. And it goes on and on. There were people that had spoon bending parties and still to this day do it, and people do this all the time. As I said, General Stubblebind, who was led the First Earth Battalion and all that stuff that was going on there, not led it, but was involved in this whole process, bent spoons himself. And not just little, they twisted him, etc., etc. All of this stuff they did. Okay? So, I mean, and there was many others, and he did it himself hundreds of times. He had a bunch of other military officers do it as well. And it was considered that, yes, we can do this. How can we use this? It's unlikely you can bend a tank barrel, but they were thinking about using it to interrupt electronics. So all of these things are not. So what he's doing is not really spectacular. He was able to become a celebrity to do it. He could adjust it. He started watches that stopped. You'd put him on your TV. I personally witnessed this. I don't think I ever, as a young teenager at that time, tried bending spoons. So I don't remember doing any of that, but I do remember watching him on numerous shows and doing that because everybody back then had an old Timex wind-up watch that wasn't working. So all of that was there, and apparently it even works when you see it in reruns on TV. So the energy is there, which is quite fascinating that it then travels through the air and TV, and these energies are that easily transferred through different mediums. So this is what he did, and he's been relatively active. I've criticized him to a certain amount about not having a research institute, not having the Uri Geller School of Psychic Empowerment. He apparently is not interested in teaching people directly. And from my understanding, he's never had anything like that. I don't think he's ever offered classes in psychic teaching. And there's a reason for this. He has written many books on this subject. He has lots of books. He has CDs that go into music, and he has a whole CD actual on bending metal, where he takes you through it step by step, which everyone should have. So there's a track on a CD doing that, and other things quite nice that he's put out, and all of his products tend to have a lot of caring and love behind them. Something that the skeptic and debunker community really lack. They come off as a bunch of hateful people that they are. Disillusioned, ex-religious, nutjob freaks that are criminals, losers, sexual deviants, etc. That's what the debunker crowd is all about. And that's not a criticism. That's a fact about the people involved in it. So, but his stuff is he's always talking about love and caring and healing. He tends to be a very religious man. He seems to believe strongly in God. So, one of his other problems, it's not the fact that he's powerful or not. SRI filmed him doing everything. It's on film. These were released, 5-6 years ago. Once the actual secrecy laws expired on that research, and that's the problem. You have to wait 20, 30 years for something to be released, and then nobody cares. Well, that's the whole idea. The whole idea is that when you do release something, and I don't know how much is really not released, I think a lot of things aren't, but when they do release some things, nobody cares. There's all the dolphin experiments that were done, and these have not been released yet. And when they are, nobody's going to care. Nobody thinks about dolphins anymore and how they were trying to use them, the military, done by Patrick Flanagan, of dubious credibility that he is, did with the dolphins to train them. I think they made a movie of that with George C. Scott where they wanted to train dolphins to put explosives on ships and other things. You know, the level of human filth to disease everything on this planet is just incomprehensible. So all of this was part and parcel of what it is. So he's written a lot of books. He has kits. He put out a psychic book with a special charged crystal in it. And also with a orange circle that you communicated with to connect to the power. I'm trying to think whatever. It had audio tape with it of his personal instructions and meditation. So it's not like he hasn't done anything. So he's done quite a bit. Nobody else that I know of out there who's any kind of psychic has put out anything like this. People have written different books, and this goes on because it's easy money. And someone approaches you, you write it with somebody else probably, and of course they sell the book. You just put the money in your pocket. It's very simple. But they're not doing anything past that. They're not having any personal contact. They don't have seminars to train you generally, etc. I'm sure there are people that do all this, but none of the famous people. Certainly he doesn't do it. He then was able to connect with somebody and found minerals and oils for someone and was given millions of dollars for finding this stuff that he was able to, and so forth. I'm not going to go into all the details and say we'll be here to the end of time, but this is how he made money, but he also made money in any other way he could. Yeah, just like everybody else. Just like Penn and Teller goes on the Apprentice TV show for publicity's sakes. Because $150 million in assets is not enough to him. He wants to keep his show making more and more money every year. But neither are any of these other people. Certainly the illusionists, as I understand, there are no David Copperfield schools of magicians. There's no Penn and Teller school. They've written a couple of jokey books to make money for themselves and to, again, give publicity to them as they're on every TV show they can as well. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on there. I don't know if they're donating to any magical societies or not. I know they donate a lot to the Unamazing Randy and have even done a film on him. So, but that's something that you have to wonder why you would do that in general. But of course, Penn and Teller's main hero was the Unamazing Randy. So this is who they based their act on, because Randy came out and said, well, this is just a con game. And they liked that, and they didn't think it was good because they were so intellectual. They knew that magicians weren't doing this for real, and they found that offensive, so they wanted to do it. And that's how they've made their success. So, but we go on and on again with that. So he's had all this publicity. He was tested at SRI. He worked for the CIA and claims to be working for them still today. Do you ever X with the CIA or intelligence? No. If you work for them once, you work for them forever. And if they need you, they're going to come back and talk with you yet again. So that's an important part of the process. So he's done a whole bunch of things, but he has written a bunch of books. There's at least 7 or 8 toys that 4 of these were made by Matchbox, showing how popular it was, particularly in Britain. Now, in the United States, you never really got to that level. I don't think their toys were ever even sold in the United States. But British Matchbox, which was British at the time, made these. Board games, other games for children, etc., which are all pretty interesting and fun. These can be noted on the YouTube channel and our website, which shows you these things in action, and you'll never see them anywhere else. So very interesting there that is happening to him. And of course, he has dowsing kits, etc. So he's come out with all these things which had L-rods in it, pendulums, etc. to teach people how to use it. They're very simplistic books. Geller is very simplistic. From what I can see from his describing of psychic powers and other things, is that he's not going into any complicated things. He has these abilities and he explains it how he uses it, which is in a very naturalistic form. Well, just relax, let the energy flow. Well, this is true. There isn't any way to make you psychic or make you bend something. It's a metaphysical understanding which is difficult to define in this materialistic world we're in. So he's a religious man. I think he's very simplistic. He is bulimic. He's had a problem with bulimia all his life, and he's a very thin person, if you've ever seen pictures of him, etc. And he states this somewhere, that he is bulimic. So he has a problem with that. So it shows that he has a certain, I don't know if you call this a mental illness, but who doesn't to a degree. So the whole idea is he's not this perfect, empowered person. He's had his problems with people, shows, credibility, etc. Don't we all? So he's had falling outs with good friends like Shippy, his good friend, that he started everything with. Apparently they had a falling out, and of course he dumped on him, etc. The same old story. And he's done lots of things around the world. You got to remember, most of the things that he does is not U.S. based because there isn't the kind of interest here. The U.S. crushes these things, even though I think there's a great support there. But the networks don't want to put these kind of things on, even with the great interest there is. So he did a reality show in Israel called The Successor, where contestants displayed supernatural powers. And of course, like everything, it came under attack. In 2007, NBC put on a show, which is very interesting. I watched this show. Geller and Chris Angel, the kind of scumbuckety magician, did a show called Phenomena, which was basically a bunch of mentalists, fake psychics, coming on there showing their fake trips. And they were looking for the next great mentalist, who apparently was Mike Super, and we've never heard from him again. I watched all that show, and of course Chris Angel took his usual magician thing that all this stuff is fake, there's no psychic powers, but he goes around insinuating that he has special abilities, and has done this to a 2020 news show reporter, where he said that he doesn't do tricks. This is what he does. You know, typical lying trickster that these stage magicians are. It's not a trick that he does. It's not a trick. What is it, Chrissy boy? So the whole idea is that's nonsense. And like all magician shows are kind of interesting, but it gets to a point where you're just the sucker. Then in January 2008, he started hosting the show The Next Uri Geller, which was broadcast by Pro7 in Germany. Again, it was a German TV. There's a lot of support for Geller in Germany for some bizarre reason, because he's kind of a German, even though they murdered all of his people. But he has a fair following. People follow him because he is kind of German, because his father was Austrian. And so forth. But as far as I know, he's in a rally that they hate and are trying to kill by supporting all the Arabs out there. So the whole idea is that he did that show, and he has a certain following. All his games and books, etc., all printed in German, otherwise known as Deutsche. And so for whatever, so he did a show there. But again, this was a German show. I don't think it got anywhere out of Germany. It certainly didn't get the United States. I don't know if it made it to England or not. Phenomena was a U.S. show, and I'm not sure it got out of the U.S., but this is very typical. He then started another show where he tends to have, again, he's very popular in Europe, a Dutch television show, which was very similar to the German show. But, these things are fascinating. People love this. But basically it was searching for mentalists again. These are tricksters. So this is one of the problems with Geller that I don't like. He really didn't put an emphasis on finding psychics because it would be very difficult to do. And I'm not sure that Geller's that kind of guy. Is he going to fight the system? He's going to go what's easy. They present this to him. He's a raw, kind of excited. Yeah, what a great concept. And as long as he gets his check, and he'll play along with the whole thing. But this is my problem with him, is he doesn't have a credibility to get into these areas. So he basically took this whole concept, started with the Next Uri Geller, this kind of mentalist thing, which I think is very similar to what really started with Phenomena. So he figured, well, this is a pretty good concept, and they had good ratings in the U.S., so he then took this show to Hungary. He also did on Greek television, Successor of Uri Geller. So all of these things started to happen, and these are short-term, high-profit things for Geller, and who can't blame him? These aren't shows that are going to go on consistently. These are things you get paid for and you move on. So the whole idea is that this is what has been there. And of course, as usual, all of these things come together with the criticism of Andrew Pisharek. People laugh at him with the extraterrestrial things. And of course, this whole extraterrestrial trick that has been pulled on everybody to discredit them as, ha ha ha, you're a nut, is now proving to be true as the amount of extraterrestrial contact and the pending physical contact with extraterrestrials grows every day, where we have people coming out. Of course, this has always been the case for the last 100 years of huge amounts of contact with extraterrestrials, seeing them physically, beings getting out of crafts, etc., in contact, and underground bases and everything else that goes with it. Is getting irrefutable. You won't find too many people that laugh at extraterrestrials anymore unless they're very ignorant. The amount of data, which is what science supposedly works on, is humongous and irrefutable. So they try and discredit him and Andrei Pisharek because of this big part of what was in Andrei Pisharek's books, his contact with intelligent extraterrestrials, who were, as usual, and the problem with all these extraterrestrials, we're going to land here. That was 1972 or somewhere in that area. We're still waiting, and I'm running out of cookies. So it's the same old story there, so it becomes a problem. So we go on and off, and of course they like to tear him apart and everything else. But he was proved by legitimate scientists at SRI Institute, a noted institute, by a person who... Russell Targ was an amateur magician, so he would have been able to figure out if he was playing games, and many, many other on the staff who never get known. It's just Russell Targ is the guy who talks about it. Hal Puthoff rarely says a word, another government clone. So it's all part of that. So you can go in and pick all this stuff, go through it, and of course, people's criticism means nothing. When you're tested legitimately by credible scientific people who are highly advanced, papered people, Russell Targ was a major factor in developing modern laser technology. So the whole idea is that he was the one that did that. This is not some stumble bomb. And the same thing with Hal Puthoff. They are highly credited, have done a lot of traditional scientific things, and I tend to think these people were forced into these positions. But Russell Targ, of course, had a family background of interest in metaphysics, and father was a publisher of metaphysical books and everything else. So there was interest in his family that goes with this. So this is all part of what goes on. So what is truth, what isn't, what's reported, what's not? Well, we live in a world of money. And to think that you're psychically talented and should somehow be in the sewer getting whatever pieces of debris, waste products that float your way to survive on is a little bit ridiculous. So he was smart enough to go out there and make money from this, and rightfully so. He should have made a lot more money. He should have helped a lot more people, and he should have started an institute to find, not in a fake way where he made a lot of money from these goofy shows he did, but in a real way to find real psychics that really would be the next Uri Geller, who really would be able to do these things. These were mentalists or illusionists. Bringing on psychics that have ability and watching them fail and putting them on TV isn't much fun. It doesn't produce good ratings. So you stage things. They're like reality shows. Reality shows is a misnomer. There's no reality in a reality show. Does anybody get that? Do you think that the Kardashians and what were the other ones, the wives of the monkeys, the wives of the sewer rats, all the things we have out there is real? Do you think that these are interesting people that do anything? It's all what they call scripted. Now, this was also shown with some of these actors have come out and stated it. And of course, you hear about this and then it just goes down the tube and people tune back into Big Butt Woman and think this is real. So the whole idea is that all of this is part of the reality that's out there. There are no reality shows. It's scripted. People don't have interesting lives. Think of your life. You get up in the morning, you brush your teeth, you take a poo, you take a shower. Oh, gee, I want to see that. Oh, can I see that guy take a shower again? Woo! So unless you're a mental midget, this kind of stuff. And what do you do every day? Oh, well, you want to watch me sit in front of the computer for 8 hours a day? Ooh, that's about as fun as watching grass grow, Thor. Well, we can do that too. Let's go watch grass grow. So all this stuff is the perpetual stupidity that we all run into of thinking that there is real reality shows. There isn't. They are all contrived. They write scripts, and that's how people go. So you have to get into certain situations. They have to. The one thing that you'll get from any entertainment media is what you have to make something entertaining. Conflict. Now your life is probably not very conflicting. And you're not going to have conflict all the time because it's not something that does well unless you're really in a horrible relationship, a horrible whatever. So it's not going to work well. So there's no such thing as a reality show. Life is too boring. It's too the same. So let's get fully understood with that. So what happens if you have a reality show where you have, 30, 40 people tramping through your house or whatever, dragging cables, destroying it, all the stuff that these movie monkeys do, who are some of the worst people on the planet. This is not. So they have to pay you a lot of money. And most reality people don't bring people in their home. When it's a reality show, they go buy a home. That's their new reality home, because they know what's going to happen to it. And when the show's over with, they sell the home. And they may not even live there. On the weekends, they go home to their real home. How many people know that? That's reality, people. So it's not their real home. Rarely. If it is, you're stupid, because they're going to destroy your stuff. And if you're rich and have lots of nice stuff and good wood floors, well, they're going to look like a train station after these monkeys get through with it. And I hate to insult monkeys who are much cleaner and smarter than your average TV crew. So when we go into all that, we need to fully understand that. So he's done all these shows, and this is my gripe with him, is that he really hasn't done anything to help the industry. Neither of that. Russell Targ hasn't. He's written a lot of books to give his kind of opinion, or I don't know if a lot, maybe it's 8 for a 40, 50-year-old career. That's not much. He does talk about some practical stuff, but there's no thing to help people. There's no ways of setting up funds to try and raise money for more research and doing other things. None of this. This is the disconnect. They also don't support people like Uri Geller. And this is one of the big problems that I have with parapsychologists and that entire industry. And I don't know how they can possibly think anything's going to happen if you trash the subjects that you interview. Now, this is, there are some people that do this, particularly goofball BBC reporters like Louis Theroux, who trashes people that he interviews, including myself, and then writes nasty books about them. But you're certainly not going to get a bunch of people to work with you in the same industry when you're such a scumbucket. So the bottom line is that Russell Targ made a lot of money for himself, did a lot of books that benefited him. I don't know where any of that money is going to. I'm assuming it's going to himself. So the whole idea is that that goes with all that. So we have a real problem here where there is a lack of support in this entire industry. And they will not confront dumb bunkers and idiot skeptics. Russell Targ is not in verbal combat, neither is Hal Puthoff, neither is so many other ones, including the really no proof allowed Jeffrey Mishlove, who refuses to confront anything of controversy. It's all a raw, isn't everything wonderful? And him and his rest of his 70-year-old plus researchers have done nothing. They're talking heads, and there's no proof. And his show won't even show anything. This is the kind of idiot attitude, and he's a constant bend over to the last minute when the unamazing Randy died, not to criticize him. With another goofball apparent Satanist that was put on as a spokesman for him because he wrote a tiny little horrible article on the unamazing. This is the kind of weak-kneed, bend-over reality that you'll get from parapsychologists. They're all like that. And even Dean Radin, who goes out and has interesting materials and tends to wave the flag, recently wrote a book on occult magic without any kind of input from occultists. And clearly states he knows nothing about magic. Oh, God, save. I feel like vomiting. What is wrong with you? You just pooed on your entire book. How does that have any credibility? So as we went through all this, we have to understand that. So that's my criticism of Geller, but of course Geller had no support. It wasn't that everybody was rallying around him. The media did because they could make money off of him. It gave him high ratings. His specials on US TV were some of the highest rated in history. Everybody got profound effects from them. People got watches started. People had healings. This generated great ratings and they followed. Not really even enough because not much was followed up from that. But there was a time when this was the golden age of ESP and psychism. There was even a show, which I'm still hunting for, called The Girl with Something Extra, with Sally Fields and John Davidson. 1969 or something. I remember watching this show. The girl had ESP, and this was comedy based on her ESP. What a cool concept that we don't even see today any longer. It was a half an hour situation comedy, and you can find info online about it, but I don't think you can find any of the shows. It was a comedy. So I'm not sure it was good or bad. How do you judge a comedy? So the whole idea is, that's how popular things were. But nobody rallied around anybody. This was a fad. It came and gone, like tie-dyed shirts, and it's history. Did anybody jump behind him? Did all the photographic evidence and what Russell Targ must have said to people personally, like Mishlove and others behind the scenes, in confidence? Nothing was there. To this day, Jeffrey Mishlove is constantly criticizing Uri Geller directly or indirectly. So, a person who he believes in, who's a noted researcher, gave Uri Geller a sprouted seed. Now, usually what you do is you give someone a seed and they sprout it, which is still amazing unto itself. But, they got one hid in their ear and, they cough for like a second and they reach down in their shoe and they pull it out and they sneeze it up, they burp out of their nose. This is what these professional illusionists can do any of that. They have props that cost a fortune or idiot props that cost pennies that are just easy to fool you with. So he gave him a sprout and said, make it into a seed. That's exactly what Geller did. Now, Mishlove said, well, did Geller have a seed on him? This was not, he never expected this to happen. Now, everything that magicians do is based on expectations and setups. They have confederates, they have people working with them, they have camera tricks, but they're armed to the teeth, so to speak. They're coming for battle, and they know they're frauds. They have to have all the gimmicks, and they have to be set up in the right way, at the right angle, at the right time, with the right wind, with the right color, with the right breeze, with the right astral dimensions. When it comes to magicians, if they have one thing that ain't right for them, you'll know it. And I know it all the time because I know what they do, and I watch for them, and I catch them often. You're not going to do it because you don't know what they're doing. Good tricks are basically undistinguishable from regular feats, period. That's why they're tricks, and that's why these people have millions of dollars in their pocket, not 20 cents because they've tricked a kindergarten audience. So when we get into all this stuff, we really have to understand the fact that this is the type of things that go on. So Mishlove stated, did he really bring a seed with him so he could do this? Well, the point is, it certainly didn't come off like he was trying to be in his typical cowardice, indirect way, stating that, Uri Geller's real. I didn't take it like that at all. That was another criticism to give me doubt about Geller. This is mind-screwing. Other people have said stories that they asked Geller, they talked to him on the phone, and everybody wants to test you. It's like everything else in life. So a whole bunch of people would say, well, yeah, I talked with Geller. And I said, Geller, what have I just written down here? Oh, you just wrote a star in the number 17.
What? You're right.
Was that staged? Well, that's right. He stuck his head, because he's special freak when he was born, into the phone and could go through the wires and come out the other side, fully formed with his eyes, and see what's on the paper there.
Yeah, well, that's scientifically proven. I'm the unamazing Rundy.
Well, this is the kind of nonsense they give you. Randy said that Geller was able to reproduce drawings because he rigged the buzzer line going into the place he was being there. And he somehow rigged a tiny camera or wire so that you could go through the wiring in the walls to see this. Now, this is a typical fraudulent magician statement that sounds, to a certain extent, well, that could be possible. I did that once. So the whole idea, there's a certain idiot logic there, but when you look at it, it's an impossibility if you've ever tried anything, which most people don't. You know, they sit in a chair all day and then tell everybody else how they should do something who are working very difficult and hard. So the whole idea is that's the reality to all of these things when we understand that. So we need to fully understand that. So this is the type of thing that you actually run into. So, so this is the kind of support you get from parapsychology. Nobody else I've heard come out here. And there are many of them out there who have written books, who've done research. There's people in the field today. I don't see Dean Radin coming out. I don't see Beverly Resnick, the head of the Psychotronic Association. I don't see anybody else coming out and giving verification to Uri Geller, even though what he's done is irrefutable and has been recorded by other credible scientists. None of it. So what did you expect him to do? Set up a research institute and bring these monkey unsupported traders in? Because that's really what they are. Is that what they were supposed to do? So, nonsense. All of this is nonsense when we have gobs and gobs of proof right on TV and everything else. And all the stuff they said, I've watched the things where they said Geller fake. They didn't fake things. See, a lot of times he didn't produce results, etc. And the famous thing is the Johnny Carson show where he didn't fail. He didn't do anything. He wasn't caught doing any tricks. He refused to go along with what was an entrapment, and he was well aware of it, which gives him credibility as a psychic that he didn't want to be drawn into the fraud of Johnny Carson, who portrayed himself and even lied right to Geller's face saying, we're not trying to trick you here. He certainly was. He got information from a guy who was trying to show that he was a fraud. This wasn't seeking truth or whether Geller was real. It was setting him up so they could get him on film doing something that he could then be persecuted for and ruining his entire career if that did happen. The Johnny Carson incident, which people like to bring out, is a fraud. Nothing happened. There wasn't any proof. And the fact is he never said he can perform like a trained monkey for a peanut. That's another lie, which has to be handled. But nobody is supporting him. He's not getting anybody. But apparently the CIA and Mossad and other people who use him frequently certainly believe enough in his abilities and keep coming back to him. Not because it doesn't work, but because it does work. He was involved in many things, including the famous trying to kill goats and everything, so he claims. Now, whether he's adding to this stuff to make himself special and saying, yeah, I work for the CIA and he doesn't, or I worked for Mossad, which I believe he has, as well as the CIA. They certainly work with a bunch of stooges like Joe McGonigal. Yeah, I'm a little turd. You know, this 5'2" little fat fuck who fell out of a helicopter and thinks he's a psychic has credibility. So they worked with a bunch of goons, a bunch of weirdos, freaks, and the head of that program who was teaching everybody was a significantly, and there's nothing wrong with it, but he was, here you're in the military in this macho organization. The guy is gay, and obviously gay, heading the remote viewing program, and where it's not legal to be in the military at that time being a homosexual. So, this is the kind of crap they put together. But Uri Geller's a fraud, right? So that's why we can't really bet anything that comes from the U.S. military, because it's all just fraudulent. It's got pretty much the bottom of the barrel people in there from beginning to end. That's what the military puts together. So, fortunately, they had a little bit of support from a credible and honest military person, General Stubblebine, who really was one of those few honorable good men wanting to fight for his country and did what he can and went outside the box and took it in the chops for it. So, I saw an interview with him, and he seems to be a very great man, motivated by a love of his country, which I find to be as rare as hen's teeth, particularly in this day and age. Problem is, when you're in a dirty system, it tends to make you stink as well. You don't walk through a pig house with the horrible stench that these animals put off and come out smelling like roses. Unfortunately, you tend to stink like the pigs. So the whole idea is that we need to understand that fully of what's going on with this. So no support, no help to this day. I just saw, I think he did a recent commercial for something. So he got involved with the people where the money is that are out there doing things. And quite frankly, not some little stage show on the side of the Rapier Bond somewhere next to the whorehouses. Magicians are super, super wealthy. They're the wealthiest entertainers on this planet are magicians ultimately. It's incredible how much money there is in theatrical music. Not music, magic. I mean, it's shocking. You would think, oh, they're just performers. It's kind of fun. They're not. Penn and Teller are worth $150 million each. David Copperfield is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I believe it's close to $500 million. Most of these magicians are making a fortune. Even if they're not worth tens of millions, they're worth millions and millions. All of them in Vegas are paid millions. And the shows they do across the country are very well. So these are things people love to go and see. You may not like country western music, but everybody likes to see magic. At least once. And I've been there as well. I've seen several magic shows, and of course I'd never go to them again because it's insulting, but everybody likes it and everybody can relate to it. It also doesn't have to do anything with the language. You can go to the jungles of Burma and do a magic show and everybody goes, oh, good, good, you can go anywhere in the world. Magic is universal language. Everybody gets it. Everybody sees it. It's visual. So that's something we need to understand here. So, these people have made a fortune. So, what would Uri Geller get into? Well, you're going to try and start a psychic institute and have the well-funded, highly supported, unamazing Randy come after you, has millions and millions of dollars in his war chest. He's supported by fake internet billionaires and military officers and show business cranks that are wealthy, like the Mythbusters, both of them who gave them lots of money, and the multi-millionaire, 100-millionaire Penn and Teller and so many other ones. Is that what you're going to do? You're going to then they're going to let you fry you because that's their job. That's what they're paid for, and they're highly paid and highly supported. Where are the highly paid, highly supported psychic people? What, the Noetic Institute? What have they ever done? You're talking about tiny organizations that have a minuscule budget that have really done nothing and will continue to do nothing. Where are you going to get support from? These people have already dished Uri Geller. They already don't support him. They already don't defend him. They already will not go to bat for him. They will not confront dumb bunkers and skeptics. Jeffrey Mishlove, who's been doing this for 30 years, doesn't have a single skeptic on his program, ever interviewing any of them. What's too scary, Jeffrey? Is that scary? Or is it a problem? But you can put on right-wing maniac Arabs who believe in their Lucifer as your best buddy. You see the disconnect, people? And I don't care what he does or who he has or who his buddies are that are now preaching violence. But it shows you of a non-rounded person who is not confronting. He confronts nobody. He shows no proof of nothing. It's a bunch of mental masturbation with the typical poor results that you get from that. And that's all the things that we're having to deal with here. It's really pathetic. So where is he going to go? You're going to go into the entertainment industry. Big, quick money, go to different places that like you, put on your little show because it's amazing, get your pile of money and go home. So that's certainly a way to do it. I would hope that someone with his money and capacities would do better. He has put out a lot of things. He's got everything from teddy bears. I talked about books. He's got many books, many games, products. He's got teddy bears. He has a line of crystal from Dickinson out of Britain that was made about 20 years ago, which I have some myself that have spoons on them. What else would I drink out of and use? So I have a collection of these because that's fun. And of course, these are my people, so to speak. And it's about time that manifesting scientists and occult scientists understand, where are my people? I need to support them. I need to be in the front lines with them. Well, that don't happen, and that's a big reason why nothing has ever happened. And of course, there are infiltrators who are paid to cause problems in all occult organizations, all metaphysical organizations, etc. People are threatened, they're given a certain amount of success to buy them off. So there's a lot of problems there. So he's got no support anybody. There's nobody out there. I know what his following it is. He certainly can't write a book today and sell a lot of it. He's not a big celebrity. He's followed in England and Europe to a degree. He's come out with different books, from what I understand, which I'm searching for and I can't find. A few years ago, there was another game he put out. There's a special rare book which we have on sale now that's very, very difficult to get, that has a lot of rare photos of him and written by him. But you're not going to find it any places. This is the problem that happens. And I'm assuming he's not putting any of his own money. People approach him and say, look, I want to do this. I'll pay you for it, like everybody does. He is now building his own Uri Geller museum in near Jerusalem. It's not in Jerusalem, but which has the largest freestanding spoon in the world. Well, I'm not sure what that means. It's just a giant model of a spoon, but I guess what else would you put in front of your museum? But he's doing the museum. He claims that he works there daily, getting it done. So I don't know how much money he has, but or maybe he's doing it just for self-love of it. But he certainly is not in any way perpetrating or has enough money just to go there and plop all this dough down. So it seems like it's a very controlled museum, and he's watching his money to make it. It's not that he has all this. And where are the donations? Where are the parapsychologists? Where are all the people that made all this money? Where's Hal Puthoff, Russell Targ, all the people out there that have lots and lots of money? Why aren't they assisting him? Well, that's a good question, isn't it? Well, they're not assisting him. They'd prefer to be kept in neutral. Well, I can't support him. I'd rather stay here with the dumb bunkers. The deviates, the clown college graduates, the convicted criminals. Yeah, they're my people. So this is what you have. So this is what the problem happens. So if he was to take the straight role and just work as a psychic and help find people and do other things, so what? People have done that. You know, there's literally thousands of psychics who have helped find people, who've helped on law enforcement. The whole idea, all of these people have done this, and they've been criticized for it. Some of them who came forward to help have actually been thrown in prison because they had too much information. They must have murdered that person. It's a dangerous thing to do with a very corrupt system. I guess he could gain some notoriety that way, but what help is that to him? I mean, there really is no money in it. No police department's going to pay you anything. So if you fail, you look like a complete bozo. What is your benefit from it? Nothing. Oh, you help society. Society don't give a damn about you as a manifesting occult scientist. If anything, they're more than happy to take their shiny new rope and hang you with it. So, what does this do for him? So we have to begin. So he's doing this. He's putting his museum together. He is in his 73 or 4 now. And the whole idea is that, yeah, that makes sense. You know, put a little money into that, leave that for prosperity. He has a small family, I think 1 daughter or something, but he has nobody really to take up his flag and to keep the Uri Geller energy going, which is really sad. So he's doing this museum, and I'm assuming he's got some helpers and friends and supporters of what he's doing. He lives in a fairly nice mansion outside of London somewhere. So, I mean, he's done okay for himself, and I'm assuming he still does. He's done these television shows in the last 15, 20 years, which I'm assuming poured quite a bit of money into his pocket. He continues to do little things here and there, but nothing that I know of that he's done has generated much money anymore. He doesn't have any new real books about himself and his life and other things. There has been a few newer ones coming out, but none of these things have gotten to any great level of popularity that I'm familiar with. They're not on the New York Times bestseller list and other things that go with all that stuff. So he's made his money. I don't know how much private stuff he's doing to help companies. We don't know what goes behind the scenes. Has he found deposits of gold, silver, and oil? This is still always rumored. There's certainly a lot of money potentially there to be made. All of this is part of the pie that we just don't know about, that never gets talked about. Corporations are not going to want to be in the headlines doing this because of the ridicule. They'll pay you and pay you well, but you have an agreement with them not to talk about it. And of course, this is what happens when you get into this negative spiral, and of course that's what hurts this entire field. All of this is part and parcel of what's going on that we really need to look at as the bigger picture. So, and again, the general attitude of Geller is one of peace and love. He's trying to help people. He's got books on healing. And what Amazing Randy doing? What is Penn Jillette doing? Now, Penn Jillette apparently has, like everybody who's super rich for whatever reason, has his own little charities and other things. But he's not talking about peace and love and trying to help people. He's talking about how there is no God. And, of course, this gets him more attention. If he's going out as the evangelist magician, he'd get nowhere. The fact that he causes controversy there with his imbecilic belief system, such a primitive, low level of thinking that he's known for. And, of course, going against everything. You got to remember that being a skeptic means you're against everything. And, of course, that means God and real science and everything else. You live in the fake reality that scientists say, because they'll have their support. And people who have the facts, the parapsychologists and other people with 150 years of research, are silent and do nothing. And that's the way it's meant to be. And these people are put upon, as I've said. So the whole idea is that moving into these areas, what is he supposed to do? So if opportunities come up for him, and most of the opportunities that are going to be anything, is going to be something that's more of a theatrical trick. I recently saw him do something with a spoon, leaving his fingerprint on it, where it actually showed. Well, this was a whole trick. This was not something he did, pushing his fingerprint into a metal spoon. I watched the whole thing carefully, and he never took his thumb off the spoon because it was rigged already. At the end, the big reveal was that his fingerprint was on it. It had nothing to do with him doing that, and that's not, as far as I know, even possible. Bending something is different. Taking that kind of imprint on something is not possible as far as I know. But he did this, and I think it was a commercial or a promotion, etc., and they paid him a lot of money. What is he supposed to do? It's supposed to be a caricature of him. It's supposed to be a caricature of what he's doing. It's not supposed to be real. It's supposed to be fun. And this is another thing that everybody who is actually a manifest scientist or an occult scientist is overlooked. You're expected to be the miracle man, popping up things and manifesting and demanifesting things and teleporting at the drop of a hat, because you're supposed to do it like that, because all rest of society produces at that high level. Doctors heal instantly, don't they? Wave their hand. You're healed. Well, usually you're not healed until your insurance is billed many months later, and generally that's just a crapshoot. After all, it is a practice. It's not a science. So the whole idea is that all of us need to fully understand this and understand the reality of what is going on with this situation. So I'm not going to go into all the other little things, all of these controversies. I've covered the Tonight Show. He did work with these other things. He's tried to sue people like Unamazing, who have libeled him. And the courts, of course, being rigged against him, was unable to in any way get legal satisfaction against these people that had no evidence that he was cheating whatsoever. And I've watched on Amazing's, he put together several clips showing Geller in action and everything else, and none of this stuff clearly shows anything. He is making assumptions that are lies, basically. So Geller in 1992 filed a $15 million suit against Randy. And, of course, but he was... apparently, he was unsuccessful because the statute of limitations had expired. So the whole idea is that he was unable to get any kind of legal satisfaction to go with that. So, and of course, he's a popular person who's been around for 50, 60 years now. And he's gotten his usual... You know, if you're not active out there... and not get into these things, you're just not going to do it. So there's lots of little things that happen. It means absolutely nothing, and it's things that have to do with personal life and business. All of this stuff happens. So it's really nothing strange. So, you know, if you're out there doing business, you're going to have problems. People are going to criticize you, get into lawsuits. Everybody has this. It's nothing new. Checking on some recent data about him. Apparently, he's moved to Tel Aviv, and he's living in Tel Aviv, Israel, since 2015. He previously lived in the village of Sunning-on-Thames, Berkshire, in the United Kingdom. I don't know if he still owns that house or not. I thought he did, but maybe he's sold everything. He is in his middle 70s, so he's going back to his homeland and probably wants to spend his last years there, of course, building his museum, which is part of what he's doing. He's trilingual, speaking Hebrew, Hungarian, and English. I've mentioned that he suffers from bulimia, and it's obvious he's so thin. He's written 16 fiction and non-fiction books, a total of that. So he's also written some fiction, which I have never read. That may be interesting of what is in that. I'm assuming they're psychic-based. He was good friends with Michael Jackson when Michael Jackson was super big. And, of course, this is trying to be noted to discredit him again because Michael Jackson's kind of a weird dude who more and more bad things tend to come out on him as actually being involved in some pretty bad stuff. But we don't really know that yet. Certainly things are strange. But so all of these things, he's worked with the, he's trying to work with the Red Cross. So he tries to help people and do different things, and as best he can. I don't know if he's doing enough in that area. As I said, everything they're trying to discredit with him. He knew the whole association with Michael Jackson. They're trying to now dirty him up. Jackson did do a lot of good work himself. What the behind-the-scenes truth is all about there. Certainly, this is a very strange and emotionally disturbed person that Michael Jackson was, and obviously was involved in very terrible drug use because he couldn't deal with his life. The fact that this is not what's portrayed to you as an associate or friend to somebody. You really don't know what's going on in their lives, especially when they're big shot movie stars. These are not people that you're spending huge amounts of time with. You go to events, parties, other things, you see them in their best light and their best mental states. So that is not a condemnation of Geller like everything else, but very typical dumb bunker tactic. So all in all, to sum up, he's like anybody else, Uri Geller. He was a regular man in terms of his rest of his life. I can't really find that he's done anything bad or evil. He defended his country. He fought in battles. He made a living and he worked with and tried to assist intelligence organization for the betterment of this world. If you read his books and listen to his stuff, he tries to do it with the attitude of love and caring, unlike all the other dumb bunkers and idiot skeptics. All of these people are in it for the money and themselves only, and they refuse to really take on serious issues like corrupt medicine, corrupt law enforcement, corrupt research in general. Yet they want to go after the people who make the least amount of impact on society when you really get past it, other than a little moment of entertainment, and that's for some reason psychics and people involved in paranormal studies. It seems to me that this is the least amount, while we have horribly corrupt institutions that they say nothing about, and particularly religion. You don't hear them screaming about religion, and there isn't them going out and attacking one fake religious leader after another, even though Unamazing did unmask the showman Popoff, who was doing Popoff tent shows healing people in a 1900 style. Anybody who believed this guy was real is kind of a complete moron. So the point is, but there wasn't a lot of that. That was just an obvious person who kept going and still goes today, doing so many things. So with that, we all have to understand that. So the fact did and does Uri Geller, and I don't know if he still has the same abilities. You know, these abilities can come and go. And when you get older, maybe they go away. We just don't know. So we just have no idea of what is going on there. In general, I see Uri Geller as an uneducated simpleton. He believes in his Jewish religion, in his country, and so forth. These are pretty simple, low-level beliefs that most people have. I don't think he knows much about science, and I don't think he knows much really about human behavior, wanting to keep Britain in the EU, being enslaved by people that were murdered his entire people. Meaning the Germans, who run the EU for their benefit and for the ultimate conquest of Europe by Arabs. So the whole idea, which they are, so the whole idea is he supported EU staying in the EU and said he would mentally make that happen. Now, we know that that didn't happen. So we now have proof that he didn't work there. But that is proof of nothing. Trying to do big stuff like that. The point is that he has been tested. It is on film of him reproducing many different things, from drawings to objects that are in boxes and other things. All of these things he did at a extremely high level. It was all filmed. It is there to be seen by everybody. And that's just one of many people. Andrei Prasharik proved all this as well. And it's really unfortunate that there isn't more documentation. I don't know if anything of Andrei Prasharik's has been saved. Apparently, some of his children have some of his documents. Pretty sad. His entire life is really flushed down the tubes because there are no institutes saving any of this. Really sad. So we don't know really what happened there other than what we have in his general books and what he's talked about. And it's the same thing will happen. Well, I guess Geller is saving his stuff in his personal museum. Hopefully there'll be a lot of good stuff there that comes out about him that maybe wasn't even able to be released until recently. So that all looks very good for at least some long-term things happening, and when he passes away, maybe some secrets will come out that couldn't come out before. So that's all part of the process of going on. But here's a verified by top professional scientists in the field who have excellent credentials, who have done research and made major breakthroughs in their fields, proving what he can do, and this has been proved by them time and time again, literally hundreds of times. So that's very important to understand as a general understanding as well. So there's no doubt about that this person, what he can do, what he can't do, what levels of this, well, it has to do with everywhere. What can science do? What can someone who's able to make a car, can they make any car? Can they do anything at any time? So, I mean, people have this high expectancy for people who are metaphysically or manifesting abilities empowered, and keep them on a much higher level than a society that is completely and totally based in fantasy, urban legends, lies, and ultimately, what does all that add up to? Failure. Society as we know it has produced nothing. But when you come up and say, I've got something better, let's try and make this work, they want to categorically stomp on you because they don't want to give up their false power and their failures to anybody else because society still is supporting them, giving money, lots of it, and keeping them in a high state of public recognition and honor for their failures. Just think about that and think how rotten that is. And to think that someone would go against this system, wouldn't be criticized. If you think that, you have to be a fool. And if you think that people that have anything, that have abilities, that have powers, that have special breakthroughs, that have free energy, to have healing technologies, to think that these people will make it regardless because there's such a need is a foolish understanding of how this very evil and corrupt society works. Until next time.